3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome back. We're coming back in from closed session. There was no action taken within closed session at this point in time. And so we come back into open session and we want to start the board meeting with our Pledge of Allegiance. And we have our wonderful union representative, Stacy. Would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And our workshop was our presentation from our middle school, McAuliffe Middle School. And would you like to address that at all, Dr. Pulver?
Sure. During our workshop, we had 3 different presentations. McAuliffe.
Excuse me? We require masks in our boardroom?
I don't care.
You want, so if it's an individual needs an accommodation for a mask, we have masks available. If you won't wear the mask, we do have our training room where our board meeting is.
You can save your breath, sir. I'm not going to wear the mask. Under 21 USC section 360 BBB 3E1823, it is illegal to mandate emergency use authorization medical products. None of the COVID masks have FDA approval. What you are doing right now is a violation of federal law, and I will not comply. Now, please get on with the meeting.
I would ask you not to address us that way.
I don't care. Get on with the meeting. You are violating federal law. Get on with the meeting. You're wasting my time and that of the rest of the community.
I would go ahead at this time, Madam President. I would recommend that the board consider taking a recess. If we could come back in session, if people still refuse to wear the mask, we could convene the board meeting without the public and just include the press.
That'd be wonderful. I think I would like to put a motion.
You might want to have a vote on that.
I'd like to put a motion forward that we adjourn the meeting. We recess
Take a
our
recess
meeting.
for how long?
15 minutes. Do you think that's reasonable?
Sure.
Recess for 15 minutes. Oh, I did. Yeah. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We
Okay,
will
so we'll take a
reconvene in
recess
15
for about
minutes.
15 minutes. If we can't comply with the requirements at that point, we'll try again. And if not, we can convene the meeting with just the board and the press.
Yeah, it's going to make no difference. This is tyranny. This is tyranny, people. We have Stacy Moore here in Los Angeles, USC. She's running against Scott Davis. When you get a Republican, he also did about
from a short recess. I would ask that anybody who is in the audience to please put on your mask. And Dr. Pulver?
And just as I stated earlier, if anybody has a medical exemption needing an accommodation, we can accommodate your viewing of the board meeting in our training room, which is via YouTube. So we do have an accommodation that if anyone needs.
So, sir, I see that you still have not put on a mask to be in here.
That's correct.
And I would really appreciate that
Not
you...
going to happen. You can save your breath. I'm not going to comply, so just get on with the meeting.
Then I would... we had hoped that this meeting would be conducted in a manner that allowed the public to participate and allowed the board to conduct necessary business. However, because of willful defiance, thank you, by attendees, it said interruptions, but defiance, by attendees, we believe the orderly conduct of this meeting has been rendered infeasible and that the order cannot be restored by removal of individuals who will willfully not follow our rules. As a result, I hereby move that the meeting room be cleared and that the board continue its session with only necessary district administrators and representatives of the press or the media. I would also like to make a suggestion to the board that of the cards we have, if people have filled out cards and they're willing to come in to the room where we're holding the board meeting and wear a mask, we would love to hear your input, one at a time. So I think that that's the way we're going to need to conduct our meeting this evening. And so I would once again adjourn so that we could clear this room.
I think you might want to get a second and have the board approve for the removal.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We would like to clear the room, and if the room is not cleared, then where we can come back in and hold the meeting in here, we will be holding it in an alternate room, and we will let those who want to speak know when they can come in and speak to the board. So I would ask that everybody leave this room, and those that want to speak can stay in the foyer. Thank you.
At this time, we're going to ask everybody to go ahead and please leave the board meeting at this time. Thank you.
What do we want to do?
But do we want to do board communication too?
Why do we have to do that?
No,
No.
let's suspend.
I don't have that much.
I don't have.
So we are testing the sound for the Los Alamitos Unified School District meeting this evening on January 26th, I do believe. Fifth, right there. So we were at the portion of our meeting where we were at the portion of our meeting where our superintendent was giving us a summary of our school report that we had during our workshop time. Dr. Pulver.
Thank you, Madam President. Do you want to, we had adjourned the meeting. Do you want to gavel the meeting back in at 7:17?
7:17, we're back in the meeting. Thank you, Dr. Pulver.
You are welcome. And for members of the public, thank you for your patience. We are working very hard to try to make sure the public still has access to our board meetings, despite the disruptions that we had. We are meeting here in an alternate location, and members of the press are also present to be able to report out on the board meeting. And we're able to make it available to our public via the same YouTube availability. So when we left off our board meeting, I was giving a brief summary of the workshops that we had at around 4:30 this afternoon, where we had our school reports for McAuliffe Middle School. Dr. Weishwright did an amazing job. We had 2 ASB students do a wonderful job giving us some student highlights. Our McAuliffe choir did a phenomenal rendition of our national anthem. We recognized their hero of the heart, which is Elke Schreiner. We recognized student William Bignami, who is the Every Student Succeeding Award. The district gets to participate through our Leadership Association, AXA, and each district gets to recognize one student who's overcome remarkable odds. And then another highlight of that workshop was being able to recognize one of our classified employees, the fabulous Miss Lisa Burke, who's been with us in the district since 2006 and just is a gem and a wonderful employee. That was in the workshop. It is available on YouTube if you didn't get an opportunity. But that's just a brief highlight of what we had during the workshop portion of our board meeting.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pulver. That was wonderful. And we will now move on to, first of all, I would like to call for a motion where we would move item 12A after the SUPS report and suspend the board member communication. Can I get that?
So moved.
Thank you. Great. So we will be moving up the presentation and the board member communication will be suspended for the evening. We need to vote. Oh, we need to vote.
I'm sorry, where are you going to be moving 12A to?
Right after your report.
Got it. I follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tully. So we will do a roll call vote since we're not on camera. Mrs. D'Angelo.
Mr. Fayette.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Forehand.
Aye.
Ms. Cattouli.
Aye. That passes 5-0. Thank you very much, board. So we can move along with our business. And so the next item is the board president's report. And this evening, I really wanted to.
We want to wait, make sure we can get the report up on the screen for YouTube.
Okay, holding for YouTube. Amazing. Thank you very much. So my report this evening is going to be a little bit twofold. As I said at the last meeting, one thing I'd always like to do is something called the do you know? And so if we all get questions during the week, and if one person has questions, then it's usually another person that might have the same question. So we want to be able to address those. But the first thing I'd really like to discuss is a resolution that we are going to have on the we're going to have on the board, we're going to have on the agenda a little later, and we are going to talk about career technical education. And we'll be showing you that lovely slide. There we go. So February 1st through the 28th is going to be Career Technical Education, CTE month. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about what that was and help the community understand what we do, because the one thing that we believe very, very strongly here in Los Alamitos Unified is that we want to make sure that our students are college and career ready. Whatever path is their next path, we want to make sure that they are ready to go. And so I know Mrs. Catulio will talk a little bit more about career technical education a little bit later, and she can give us more details because she is on the North Orange County ROP board. But I did want to say that at our campus, we have information technology, IT. Goodness knows everybody needs their IT people. We're certainly very grateful for ours tonight. Thank you. And engineering design, patient care, that's with our sports medicine program, our sports medicines programs that have just been phenomenal over the years. Production and digital production and advanced digital video production. We know that video production is huge in this day and age. And then public safety. And we've got a very robust public safety program as well, and that's fire technology and emergency medical responder. And we even have had, because I've had the absolute pleasure of being at a couple of I'm sorry, we're trying to get the slides for it. But also being at a couple of Rotary meetings where we have honored some of our students, and we've had students that have actually come out of high school and been able to be medical responders and a variety of other things with a job that can help them immediately. And so I know that Mrs. Catulli will talk a little bit more about some of the other ROP classes that are around the county, but that our students can go to. So if there's something else of interest that they find that we don't have at our campus, they can go to another campus. And then we also have a CTE professional internship course in the spring of 2022. And really what this course does is really allow students to kind of get those skills to learn how they're going to go into compete for interviews, and to know what they need to do for their support, for their career path, and an experience of portfolio of experiences to get them ready for that career as they go into an industry. And so we're really proud to offer that as well. Does anybody want to add anything to that, or we will move on to I've got my own clicker now. I'm so excited. So did you know this board meeting, we're going to talk about school calendars. And our school calendars, I know it's something that is very, very important and interesting to parents. I can't tell you how often I get an email saying, do you have the school calendar for this year? We want to plan our trip in 18 months. I'm like, okay. And so, but it's really important so people know when they can take vacations. Some people in their work, they have to put in for vacation a long time ahead of time. And so we try to make sure that our calendars are easily available on our website.
You click next.
Click next, please.
It's not really working.
Yeah. So, so we want to make sure that they're available on our website, and this will give you an idea of where they are, and that you can find each individual school calendar. Because I know another one of the things that's difficult for parents often is that maybe they've been at elementary school for 6 years with 2 students, and then one moves on to middle school, and they're like, oh, how is that going to disrupt everything? So there are all the school calendars there and available for you. And the next thing I just want to touch on is that a lot of times I get questions from the public that say, oh, you made up that calendar. And, we're very collaborative here in the district. And so the calendars are created by actually our employee negotiations and created through our employee negotiations process. And that's something that we always look at. So we really are balancing the needs of our staff and what they need to have on the calendar and what they need to do to
best support students and also for their own personal life, as well as our public as well. And so if you want to know how far in advance you can find them, they're usually negotiated 2 to 3 years in advance. And the creation of the calendar takes place during the negotiation process with our LAEA, Los Alamitos Education Association, and the district management to create a calendar that considers various perspectives and considerations. And we also want to take into consideration things that are important to the district as well, which is something called ADA, which is average daily attendance. So one of the things that we found through the years is that, let's give the example of Thanksgiving weekend, Thanksgiving holiday. You know, we found that parents were starting to take their children out of school and not be in school on Wednesdays. And so we really wanted to advance that so that we could be getting the most ADA possible with also giving our staff and our parents the most options. So a little did you know how our school calendars come to be. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to the fabulous Will and Brandon Berger. And I'm not sure how well the clicker is working, but you also have wonderful staff here that will help you forward your slides. Will.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's good to see everybody back again. I'll also wait for you two, I think, right?
Okay.
No worries. I had some stand-up planned, but
I was going to say, you pick up those clues.
we
In
can do
order
that
for
for next
YouTube
meeting.
to look
Sorry.
bigger, I have to have it like this. Is that okay?
Yeah. All righty. Well, good evening, President Hill, esteemed board members, Dr. Pulver, executive cabinet, and community members watching online. It's great to be back here as always, and I'm so excited to showcase another report for you all. So without further reason to dilly or dally, let's get into my ninth report. And next slide, please. While it is still very early into the second semester and students are facing their first test for the new grading period, AP classes are slowly transitioning from daily learning into a review-based curriculum. AP testing is 4 months away, but students are starting to review concepts from last semester in order to have students ready for the May testing dates. Classes like AP English Literature and Composition have started to review the basic components of reading. Some of their assignments cover topics like character arc, personification, and symbolism. I can assure everyone that these next 4 months will pass by quickly, so it's a great time to get some early review in and not cram the night before, something I am unfortunately familiar with. Once again, activities have been pretty quiet around LaSalle, but that's going to change next week with our 2022 trademark and patent pending annual ping pong tournament. The tournament is free to play and all games will start next week. So if you're someone like myself who does not know how to play ping pong to this day, you've got 1 week to pick up what I think is called a paddle and practice because this friendly competition gets intense. Students who would like to spectate can watch the games by the track if they want to see the action take place live and cheer on their peers. And now we move on to athletics, and there's no better place to start than with girls basketball who just had their senior night. Last Thursday, the team pulled out all the stops for their 29-point win against Edison and made sure to honor Lael Sells as her senior basketball season comes to an end. And just a week earlier, they won by 30 points against the Huntington Beach High School Oilers. Now, I'm not sure if everyone's heard about last Friday's boys basketball game, but if not, that's what I'm here for. Winning in overtime, the Griffins defeated Fountain Valley by a nail-biting 6 points. Highlights included Jake Petroff's heart-pounding three-pointer to secure the win in overtime, and Daniel Magoza's three-pointer to tie the score seconds before the end of the fourth quarter. But now it's time to transfer over to the field where girls soccer just won their past 2 games. They won 4-0 against Corona Del Mar last Tuesday, and while girls basketball was tearing it up inside the gym, last Thursday, the girls in the field won 5-0 against Fountain Valley on the same night. And the same goes for boys soccer, who is also destroying the competition, winning their last 5 games. Most recently, they won 3-0 against Fountain Valley and 2-1 against Edison. If you want to catch one of their last 2 home games, they have a senior night this Thursday happening at 6 p.m. But last, certainly not least, we dive into the pool as it's time to talk about the Lady Griffins on water polo. Last Tuesday, the team won against Corona Del Mar in a thrillingly close 1-point victory. And let's all send them good luck and positive vibes as they're currently playing in the LoSal pool against Laguna. This past week has been absolutely crazy for the winter sports around campus, and more is coming as we continue to delve into the second semester. During last week's basketball game against Edison, the dance program had a stellar halftime show. They performed a 2-minute choreographed dance to songs like You Right by Doja Cat and Get Up by Ciara. It was a great break from from the close score that the teams left us with at halftime, and everyone calling their chiropractor for the next appointment. I don't mean to be dramatic, but we do have some news fresh off the press from the drama department. It was announced last week that that LoSal won big from the California Educational Theater Association Awards night. LoSal's finest students won awards like the Adjudicator Medallion, 2 Director Awards, a whopping 9 Certificates of Merit, and a special shout out goes to Nikki Ocampo, who won a $500 BIPOC scholarship from the association. And if these awards don't get you excited for the next show, I don't know what will. And just a day after the awards came out, they also announced that on April 28th and 29th, the drama department will have their spring show titled Museum. It's sure to be a great show full of the emotional highs and lows found at the Broadway level performance right from the stage at LAHS. And now for this week's teacher time, we have the man, the myth, and the absolute legend, Dr. Coriati. For what is now his 28th year teaching, Dr. Coriati has been able to call Los Alamitos High School his home, teaching English 1 and English 1 honors. He loves the course because he gets to show his students how purposeful and the choices of an author are. He especially reinforces the idea that no matter if a story is fiction or nonfiction, every single word on the page has a purpose. In his own words, the highest form of art is writing, and it's vital to educate the next generation of students about this lost art. Besides close reading stories like The Scarlet Ibis or To Kill a Mockingbird, Dr. Coriati makes sure he lays down a foundation of rigor and academic workload for the next 3 years in future AP classes. When he's not teaching, he's watching his nationally ranked son play tennis. And when he's not watching tennis every Saturday from early in the morning to late at night, he's reading. Currently, he's wrapped up in Sinclair Lewis's classic novel, Babbitt. After all these years, he looks back at his time and is grateful to have made an impact on so many students like myself and to be able to teach in the district. What I find so amazing about Dr. Coriati is that over the past 4 years, no matter how busy his schedule is or how many papers he has to grade, I can always stop by his room for advice on my own writing and any personal dilemmas I face. As we transition to the student spotlight, we also transition from the real world to the fantastical realm of esports gaming, while also spotlighting the amazingly skilled Cody Trainer. Cody is a senior at LoSal and is currently enrolled in 5 AP classes. And while he's a math whiz and an English fiend, he excels most in the world of League of Legends. What started as a casual hobby has led Cody into some of his crowning achievements at LoSal. Cody has served as the president of the Esports Gaming Club since his junior year and strives to connect all of 10. When he's not planning tournaments for his fellow gamers, Cody is grinding levels in League of Legends, where he is currently diamond rank. I'm not gonna lie, I had no idea what that meant, but Cody reassured me that he is the same rank as some of the best players in the world. Video games are more than just a fun break from homework or his job at Ding T. It's a world where he is free of worry and it can escape from the stressful life of the senior. While he is still awaiting to hear back from colleges, Cody's dream is to attend UCI and major in pharmaceutical sciences, hoping to one day work in the pharmaceutical industry. Cody has been an advocate for all students across campus to get engaged with each other and enjoy the simple pleasure of video games, a skill that has built so many friendships for him and makes him an overall great person. There's no doubt in my mind that we will see Cody at the next gaming convention, playing with some of the greats or making the next best medicine on the market. Wherever the world takes him, he has the skills to succeed. Congratulations on all the hard work, Cody, and hats off to you. But for now, that's all for this report, folks. Thanks for listening, and to those at home, thank you for watching. Have a great night.
Question,
Oh,
did you
please.
say that water polo was currently happening this evening in the bowl?
Currently,
So I
yeah.
can't go this
They
evening.
started at 6:20, right before we started, but I don't know the score yet, but I'm hoping for a win.
Okay, thank you, Will.
No problem.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Oh, I have a question, and this is really off the top of my head, and I hope it does not put you in an uncomfortable position.
Yeah.
Formal has been postponed.
Yeah.
Do you know what the reaction was? Well, I'm obviously disappointment, but do the students seem to be, okay, I'll just go in March?
So I think what has happened is that a lot of kids were just, I think the word is apprehensive to just, it was a little bit awkward to change around buses and dinner reservations, but overall, I think kids are just happy it's going to happen. And I myself am just happy I have another month to think of what sure I can win.
Yes.
Iron that out.
So important.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got it.
No pun intended.
Coordination, that's my keyword.
Exactly.
We have to coordinate. Okay, thank you.
No
Because I know
problem.
that was probably disappointing, but I was hoping that the students would roll with the situation like you just said. So great, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Mrs. Gatuli. And Dr. Palmer, we're going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Madam President. Great job, Will. I love following you. Your energy is something that is just inspiring, particularly kind of just updating us with all the wonderful things going on for our kids within the 4A's. So thank you, Will, for doing that. Tonight, what I thought I'd spend some time just briefly highlighting is our 5th grade outdoor science school program. As many of you may or may not know, each year we have tried to make this an option for our 5th grade students to take their learning outdoors and really focus a week of science, or 4 days, I guess would probably be better to be stated. Last year, during the hybrid schedules, it's actually a part of the previous year. Some schools had gone and others did not. So it really wasn't an option for our 5th graders last year. I just want to give our hats off. Our Ed Services team is really completely committed to finding options for our students to ensure that this was possible. We had been going to Codes Camp, OSS, and as we were reviewing their COVID safety plan, we were concerned that they couldn't guarantee that all of our schools would be able to go if they had an outbreak or if they had staff that had to quarantine. We may have to not have a school go the following week, as we've typically gone in sessions. So we researched another camp, and our 5th graders are going this week and next week. So we took a look at Pali Institute, which I'll give a little bit more information later, but actually our 5th graders at Lee Elementary, Los Alamitos Elementary, and Weaver head up the mountain today for OSS. And what's pretty exciting is this is one of the first opportunities where we've been able to have 3 schools go collectively at the same time. And I'll share more information how they're still separated but collected at the same time. Next week, so we can get all 6 of our elementary schools up to OSS within the 2-week period. Next week, February 1st through the 4th, they go Tuesday through Friday. It's Hopkinton Elementary, McGaw Elementary, and Rossmore. As we were navigating this change, our director of accountability, Melissa Davis, and Mrs. Reed, they had researched Pali. Then Melissa Davis gave a whole presentation to our 5th grade parents to really understand why we were making this change. And again, the goal of the change was to ensure we did not deny this opportunity to our students. And so Pali's a larger program. They own their property. They run the camp all year long. So it's their staff is hired all year, which is why they can ensure that they have the protocols. And so the previous camp, they only hire the campers for that season. And so our students will be involved in a number of activities, including climbing and archery, orienteering and adventuring, animal and plant investigations, astronomy, night hikes, line dancing, campfire, and even a skit night. So it is 4 fun days, 3 nights up in Running Springs, right outside the San Bernardino Mountains, reinforcing the science concepts. And so one thing that was critical to us was really understanding their COVID safety plan. Pali Camp has a robust health plan. They have a 24/7 registered nurse with a wellness center. All staff are vaccinated and undergo weekly COVID testing in addition, which really ensures that they're going to be shut down. Campers are required, so all of our students, before they went up to camp, they were required to submit a COVID test within 72 hours of departure. We actually decided to use the rapid antigen self-test because some of the PCR tests are taking longer than 3 days, and we didn't want to. So we offered families over on Sunday and yesterday to take the rapid antigen test that it was administered and proctored. So our campers are at the 3 schools are up there already. They do remain in cabin pods for the course of the camp. They wear masks when they're indoors, but obviously if they're outdoors in the outdoor spaces, that is optional. But in all common spaces, except when eating or drinking. No masks are worn while sleeping in cabins. And so the way that the camp has been able to accommodate that is they ensure that all the student beds are 6 feet apart. Pretty impressive. So should a camper experience symptoms, a camp nurse will call home and offer a rapid test or the option for parents to come and pick up their student. And as I shared earlier, Pali has a wellness center and a registered nurse 24/7. So I know even I was talking with some of our 5th grade teachers who were really excited to be able to go up there when they wanted to ensure they were kind of isolating themselves as well to ensure that nothing happened to them so that they could be up there with their 5th graders this week and next week. So one of the things this camp, because it does offer a bit more services, is a little bit more money to our students. And what we worked really hard not to pass some of the additional costs onto our families. So some of the COVID and in-person learning dollars that we've received is being applied to help support this for our families. It's a cost of about $375 per student for the 4-day. That includes the busing, their meals, and all of the education. One of the programs that we have is it's all parent paid. And so we used to have a booster club, and then we take donations from each parent group moving forward to ensure that all kids can go. So that if financial is that's the only reason why a student doesn't want to go. We work really hard. This community is amazing to find support, to make sure that all students can go regardless of financial need. And then, as I shared already, using some of our COVID funds to offset the cost there. So the 4-day program is pretty exciting. Our 5th graders were excited to make sure that they weren't going to lose out on that opportunity this year. And I look forward to hearing from our students when they return on Friday. And our next 3 schools are looking forward to going up next Tuesday. So, I just want to thank all of our principals, our 5th grade families, and our Ed Services team to really make this. A lot of heavy lifting occurred very quickly to make this, ensure that this option still became available to all of our 5th grade students. So thank you. That concludes my report.
Dr. Culver, I just want to say that that made my heart so happy because we know how many things our students have missed over the last 2 years, and that your staff was able and willing to figure out a way to do this and do it quickly, and everybody could adapt. Makes me so proud of Los Alamitos.
Deputy Reed and Director Melissa Davis went up and toured the camp ahead of time just to ensure, met with the camp to see if it was going to be a viable option. And we were very pleasantly surprised. So, and excited about it.
Thank you very much.
You're
And
welcome.
anybody else want to say anything? Wonderful. So now, since we did adjust our agenda, we have removed our board communication, or suspended it for this meeting. And we are moving to item 12A, which is the Los Alamitos Education Association initial proposal for 2021-2022 for Los Alamitos Unified School District. And Dr. Frazier.
Thank you, Madam President. We are bringing forward, we have Stacy Schmitz here, our LAEA president. So I just want to first say, we always really appreciate her being at our meetings. When she's here, she's a devoted mom, teacher. She's got so many hats that she's done. So we really thank her and her team for all the work that they do in the negotiations process. So I will turn it over to Stacy.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Culver, Executive Cabinet, for having me here tonight.
Voice up.
I'll start over, right?
Come closer.
Can we come over here? All right. Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Culver, and Executive Cabinet. Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm here just to sunshine our article for negotiations. The Los Alamitos Education Association proposes to open negotiations for the 21-22 school year on Articles 12 class size. LAEA reserves the right to discuss all articles of the collective bargaining agreement between the Los Alamitos Unified School District and the Los Alamitos Education Association for the purposes of discussion and modification. We're looking forward to continuing to use the IBB process as we negotiate contract language for this current school year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stacy. And there are a couple of other sections that go along with your sunshining, and we're going to have public comment first and then go into those. But we also really respect your time, and so if you need to go, just turn us on to YouTube.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
And then I would suggest, Madam President, really the members of the public, it's a little bit difficult to do the public hearing when the public's not fully present. So if we want to alert the public, if you would also like to speak during the public hearing on the items of the initial sunshining of LAEA and the district during public comment, you could also discuss that as one of your public comment items.
Thank you very much, Dr. Culver. We are just pivoting all over the place this evening. So the next, we're going to go into our public comment. And so this is our public comment, open session items, non-agenda items. The board welcomes input from the public. This is the opportunity for the community members to provide public comment to the board on agenda items or items not listed on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the board should complete a speaker request form. Each speaker is limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. Public comment is limited to a total of 30 minutes. We're within that time frame. We have 5 cards this evening. Comment cards can be submitted to the district office anytime before 9 a.m. and throughout the day of the board meeting. And this will also be accepted at the board meeting. A speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another. When addressing the board, speakers are requested to address the board from the podium, state their name, and adhere to time limits. The board will not take any action the board may not take any action or discuss any item not appearing on the posted agenda and cannot immediately respond to public comment. Speakers are cautioned under the California law, no person is immune from liability for making intentionally false or defamatory comments regarding any person simply because those comments were made in public. And so even though we did pivot this evening, one of the things that is very important to this board is that we hear the public that comes to speak to us. So our first speaker will be Lauren, and we may have a small break until they come in.
Yep, I'll go try to get them.
Thank you.
Okay. Andrew, do you want me to time?
I have the timer.
Okay. Can I take this off?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
Especially not close.
And this is online, so you can hear me?
They can.
Yeah,
That's
they
why we put you next to the mic.
Okay. How much money are you taking from the federal government? Should be the question every parent is asking. Los Alamitos Unified School District has received roughly over $6.4 million. Elementary and secondary school emergency relief money under the CARES Act, ESSER 1 and 2 money was released. In order to receive ESSER 3 funds, schools have to submit a district plan every 6 months through September 2023. And they have to prove how they are universally masking our children and fulfilling requirements like sanitizing, contact tracing, testing, isolation, quarantine, vaccination, physical distancing, and more. Read this for yourself on the Los Al District website under COVID-19 Safety Plan. It states on page 16, under the CDPH guidance, it notes everything I've said above. Why are the links not working? This is why they are masking our children, not because of health and safety. I get it, schools face substantial financial and other risks if they do not follow mandatory universal masking as directed from the CDPH. Get the money back, take the price tag off our children's heads, admit you are wrong, and refuse to go along with the social experiment that is costing our children's health, education, their lives, and their future. This is just for extra money. Enforcing COVID-19 mandates upon our children is even more than a conflict of interest. None of this is backed by science. Davison, last meeting you saying that pulling unvaccinated from in-person to online would need extra funds? You really are a bean counter as you say you are, aren't you? An extra 6.4 million isn't enough. It's all about money. You are really about masking when last year you said from the Spectrum article from July 22, 2021, you said there could be long-term impact to children and students wearing masks in classrooms. I can't imagine our little ones learning facial cues, learning how to respond to people with nonverbal communication with a mask on. I think there's going to be a long-term damage when kindergarteners or first graders don't see their friends smile. For 6 hours, a lot of our students are going to have to mask over their faces. Scott, last meeting you said, let's get back to business because it's all about money, right? Over, I get it. You have a lot of pressure on you. You feel like nobody likes you. You feel like a broken record. That's because you're being played by the CDPH and you think you could keep playing as parents. Enough is enough. Stop acting like you care about our children, but it's obviously about money. This is about their physical health when mental health is being left behind. Be the voice for our children. They need us. We are our children's biggest advocates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want a second to that?
And thank you. I hope you guys really do care about our children, okay? Because obviously, you know what I talked to you about, and it's not happening. They
Thank
just didn't listen to kill, they would have already killed me.
Our next speaker will be Maria Palomar, Palme, something, I think. Palma. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
You are being, there's a microphone right there so that you can be heard.
So do I have to get closer?
No, you're fine right where you are.
Hi, board. My concern is the gender pronouns. I don't think these belong in the school. I feel if you're a boy, you're a boy. If you're a girl, you're a girl. And that's what most parents believe here at Los Alamitos. And when you do have a certain teachers in the school who are making the decision to teach children otherwise, without the parents' permission, it's not a good thing. Things like, would you rather be a he if you're a she, or a her if you're a him, or what about a they and them? You can be both. This is completely ridiculous and out of line for a teacher who is hired to teach a particular subject and ends up sneaking these things into our child's mind. That's up to the parents, and most parents don't want that. Parents want their children learning the subjects that these teachers are hired for. We pay taxes for these teachers to teach the subjects they are supposed to teach. One teacher in a Midland public school in Michigan had children that identified as cats go to a restroom where a litter box was placed for them. That is sad. You're going to have some messed up generation if you allow this gender pronoun teaching in our schools. Confused kids coming home to parents asking who and what they are. Well, I, as a parent and grandparent, am not going to allow the school board members to allow these teachers ruin my child. You can stick your child or grandchild in that classroom and allow that abuse to happen, because gender pronoun incidents happened at Oak Middle School classroom, and I'm sure you're all aware of it. But not me or many of these parents that I'm talking to are going to allow it. We are going to take care of this now if you don't. We need to hear you are not going to allow your teachers to teach this nonsense, or we will protect the children, whatever it takes, because all of us parents are planning ahead before it's too late for our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stacy Muller is next.
Right by the microphone, so you'll be fine. Come on in. I'll get another chair for your daughter. She's the next speaker.
I thought that last name looked familiar and the writing looked familiar.
There you go, sweetheart.
So we have Stacy and then
Nixon,
Nixon.
just like the president, but I didn't name her after him. No offense. Do you want to talk next time? Okay. Hi, everybody. Such a small room, intimate and cozy. I get to see everyone up close. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, I'm glad she brought up the gender pronouns, because I'm very concerned about this, and that this is actually the show we went on, Dr. Phil, about was I'm concerned, as a mom about, and my kids know about trans and gay, and all my friends, that's all I have really is gay and trans friends, most of them. And I think it should stay at home. And I'm concerned about these kids getting they're getting introduced to this stuff from teachers. And I don't think it's the place of the teacher to introduce it to the kids. There's going to be kids that have issues, gay and trans issues, and maybe they're in the wrong body, or they like boys, or they like girls, whatever. Very valid, extreme need support, 100%, but not all kids in my opinion, should be exposed to this, because what I've heard is that at LaSalle, the kids on one arm are doing she, her, they, writing it. And then on the other arm, they're doing he, him, they. And then they dress like a male on this side and female on that side. And then they go in the classroom and they're like, today I'm he, him, they. And then they go to they go to the next class and they're like, now I'm she, her, them. And it also, not only is it confusing for kids and kind of trendy, but also the kids that actually have this problem, how it makes such light of it. And it's a serious problem. I actually have friends that have kids that are trans, and they started at a very young age. It's a very serious, long-term, debilitating problem. Not problem, but issue and situation that they deal with. The other thing I wanted to talk about, so I'm really concerned about this topic, and I hope that we'll take it seriously, because it is happening in the classrooms. And they are being encouraged to go to the GSA meetings. And I've said this before, and Dr. Pulver, you know this about me. I am a huge advocate for the gay community. Huge. Like for 40 years, those are my friends. However, even they don't like this pushing on the kids. The other thing is I want to know, I was surprised when I had to pull my kids out of the district for a lot of reasons. And what, vax mandates, mask mandates, CRT, which it does exist here, social justice standards, ethnic studies, a lot of different things I don't agree with. They were posting things on Instagram that I found out, I don't even follow Instagram, but people would send them to me, and I was like, I got to pull my kids out because I don't know what's going on in the classroom and I don't trust it. But I was shocked at how no one asked me why. No one asked me what was wrong. Dr. Pulver, you sent a very nice note back saying you're welcome here anytime, which I appreciate. However, I think the feedback is so important to hear from parents who have left this district. What's better than that? Feedback from the parents that have left. What happened? What went wrong? What do you want changed? What would bring you back here? I feel like we're missing a huge opportunity there, and that's a lot of parents. I know a lot of parents that have left. And so I know that financially we're not hurting, and I know that we've gotten COVID money. And so that's what I was going to discuss as well. And I'll do that at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Nixon wants to talk.
Yeah, let me just, sorry, I had to.
That's
cancel
fine.
This, get the,
She wrote this herself.
just
With
give
none
me
of my
one
input.
second, Nixon. Just a second.
Well, I helped you with the grammar. With the grammar.
Well, that's mama's job, is to help, right?
Probably best if she stands right here.
Sure. You want to
People
stand
look
again?
over things.
I can't.
What's that?
I just said people often look over things for people.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Come on over
Just
here,
get a
Nixon.
little
You could
closer
just
so
stand
your
right here
voice can be
beside
heard.
So your voice can be heard.
And then I'll start the timer when you speak, so whenever you're ready.
I'm gonna go slow.
Uh,
Hi. She's ready.
Okay.
Go
You may
ahead.
go.
Hi, my name is Nixon Miller.
Speak
I-
up and
I
speak
am
slower.
in third grade. I would be at McGaw right now, but with all the CRT, vaccine mandates, and masks, I choose not to be at the school. I do miss my friends, but I'm very glad I don't have to worry about all this grown-up stuff. I can't believe you are letting this stuff happen in classrooms. This school used to be fun. Now it is messed up. And this is why you should stop this. You need to stop this as soon as possible. You need to let kids be kids.
Very
Nice job.
good. Well done. That's all for us.
Thank you.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you. And then our last card is Yasin.
Yasin.
Yasin. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's how I read my hotel room. But Marla said she was already full. I said, do it to 62.
Right here?
Right that chair. You got it. It's right next to the speaker.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, that's a little bit disconcerting. I just wanted to kind of, first of all, thank you, because it's kind of a long night, I'm pretty sure for all of you too. Just to go over what I've gleaned over in terms of what's happening in the world. The United Kingdom has obviously really backed off on a lot of their COVID restrictions and such. So has Spain, Ireland, and the Czech Republic. Now, in the city of New York, or the New York State in general, it looks like the most recent thing is that the school mask mandate has been ruled unconstitutional and illegal throughout the state. And also the California, I think, Department of Health and Human Services has put up new data recently that the number of vaccinated hospitalized cases far exceeds the unvaccinated cases. So I wanted to just glean over a bit of this because I know there's a huge thing going through the state level, and I'm not even, I can't, it's unfathomable to me that anything related to the COVID coercion would still go through. Even though ICANN is suing, even though the Board of Education is suing the state for this illegal extension of the emergency state. The other thing that I don't understand is, what does Los Alamitos Unified School District stand to gain by complying? Because right now it's compliance, not science. And it's so apparent that this whole entire, I don't even know how one calls this, it's crumbling. And I think the world over is catching on. And so I wanted to kind of get an idea of how much money does Los Alamitos Unified School District stand to gain by complying? And how is that money spent? I guess that's an open-ended question right now. So the injunction against companies with more than 100 employees has gone through. OSHA cannot enforce that. The injunction against COVID experimental coercion for federal employees also has gone through. So basically federal employees can't be coerced to get the experimental injections. It's just crumbling. And so I hope, I hope that, like I said last time during the last meeting, that I know there's a lot of people who are saying it's all great, well and good, but there's so much information. So get vaccinated and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there another speaker? Or is it the last?
That is the end of our speakers for the evening. And we will take just a short moment while we then re-adjourn our meeting. We appreciate the public comment, and now we will move into some of the rest of our meeting. Right now, we're going.
Madam President, if you may, I would just like to provide a few clarifications on some of the public comments. Really, the two that were associated with the dollars that the district receives, either through the federal government or through the state. They are not for COVID, for the in-person learning, the ESSER 2, ESSER 3, et cetera. None of those dollars are contingent upon us adhering to the California Department of Public Health guidance. Even if the money was not there, we would still be compelled as a state public agency to follow the guidance and the executive order of the governor and the guidance from CDPH at this time. So just wanted to provide that clarification.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pulver. I do appreciate that. And so now we will move into our public hearing on the Los Alamitos Education initial proposal for 2021-22 school year to the Los Alamitos Unified School District. And so now this is a public hearing. I'm going to gavel out of our meeting gavel into the public meeting. And seeing that is there anybody here to comment on the LAEA initial proposal?
And just a reminder, we did encourage the public if they wanted to comment on that as well as they were coming in for the public comments, since we were in a different format given tonight that the public couldn't be present via this meeting other than the virtual comment. We didn't see any of them speak to that either, but they did have that opportunity.
We did. Thank you very much. And so see.
Am I allowed to?
You're part of the public,
Okay.
sure.
Well, I just wanted to thank Stacy for all of her gigantically hard work and the way that you are so responsive and listen to people. And the idea of lower class size, having been a teacher, is always on our hearts because you're thinking of the kids. And just thank you for the hard work that you do. We're really fortunate to have you. The district is fortunate to have you in that position. So is the community. So thank you.
Well said, Mrs. Davidson.
Joe's not there. Let me get him.
Yes. And so then we will go ahead and gavel out of this. And then we are going to wait for Dr. Fraser to come back into the room for our next item, which is the Los Alamitos Unified School District initial proposal for 2021-22 to the Los Alamitos Education Association. So this is the other side of the negotiation process.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Fraser is trying to help support with crowds or those present, so I'll go and carry on. This is part of the other part of the sunshining. Earlier you heard LAEA sunshining their article of class size, and the district plans to open up the article, I believe it's Article 9, the evaluation, and this has come up, we've heard from staff to relook at our evaluations, even the fall planning process, and we thought this would be a good opportunity to discuss that with our association so that we could work collaboratively on that. And so at this point, that will be the article that we will be sunshining, and we hope to begin negotiations on the contract language of those two articles sometime in February.
Thank you very much. And now we will go into the public comment part of the sunshining for the Los Alamitos Unified School District. So I will gavel out of our meeting, gavel into the public hearing on the Los Alamitos Unified School District initial proposal for 2021-2022 and the Los Alamitos Education Association. And as we had no comment earlier and see no other comment, anybody else, any board members or public? I will then go ahead and gavel out of that meeting. Our next presentation will be made from Mrs. Reed, and she is going to be talking about our universal TK. And just to let everybody know that we used to have these kinds of workshops at our 4:30 time, and then have our school presentation within the 6:30 time frame. And situations have happened, and we have flip-flopped it, and it seems to be working much better, I think, for our public, for our school sites, for our students. They get home earlier, and so if it seems a little different to you, our format has changed a little bit. So Mrs. Reed, I'll hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Madam President. Tonight, I am really excited to talk about an old program that's going to be reimagined next school year, and so universal transitional kindergarten. And so many of our families that have been with us since 2010 remember when we started our transitional kindergarten program. And our current transitional kindergarten program next school year is going to be reimagined to universal transitional kindergarten. So they won't be two separate programs. I know I've gotten a lot of questions in the community where people think we might be running a transitional kindergarten classroom and a universal transitional kindergarten classroom. That's not the case. Transitional kindergarten will be morphing into universal transitional kindergarten. And so what is TK? And I think a lot of the questions people have is it mandatory now that we see this expansion of TK? And so TK really is a stepping stone between preschool and kindergarten. Both TK and kindergarten in the state of California are entirely optional. They're not part of the compulsory education. children are only required to attend school in California once they turn 6 years of age. Really, up until that age, parents have the discretion if they'd like to send their child to a private school, a public school, a charter school, a preschool, a transitional kindergarten program, and some parents can even choose to have childcare arrangements made at home up until the age of 6. So that's all still intact, even though we're moving towards a universal transitional kindergarten program. So in 2010, the Kindergarten Readiness Act passed, and it really stopped those late birthdays from entering our kindergarten classroom. So many of us in this room went to kindergarten during a time when you could turn 5 up to December 2nd. And really, there was about 30 years of research that was looked at when this Kindergarten Readiness Act was passed that really saw a lot of those students with the late summer, early fall birthdays were the students who are continuing in kindergarten for a second year. It was a large percentage of those children. And so in 2010, the Kindergarten Readiness Act changed that December 2nd cutoff to a September 2nd cutoff. And it was really through a 2-year rollout where each year it rolled back from December 2nd to November 2nd to October 2nd. So finally in 2012, where we saw the start of kindergarten meant you had to be 5 before September 2nd. And so really what happened when the Kindergarten Readiness Act passed was there's about 100,000 students in the state of California who were in that September, October, November timeframe that didn't really have an option to be served in our public schools. And so what we saw was in 2012, transitional kindergarten emerged, and that's really what we've had up until this present time. And that's where we enroll students who turn 5 between September 2nd and December 2nd. So really what I think we've all kind of called this gift of time. This extra year that students have to mature, to really take kindergarten as a 2-year kindergarten program. And so fast forward 12 years later, and in 2019, an Assembly Bill 130 was passed, or brought to legislation and passed as part of the 21-22 state budget. And basically what it does is it expands the language of transitional kindergarten. And so it provides TK beginning next school year. And what it really does is it increases the window by which students can qualify for TK. So if you take a peek here, next school year, if you turn age 5 by February 2nd, so we're going that 2 months out from December 2nd, you qualify for a universal transitional kindergarten the following school year by April 2nd, June 2nd, until really in the 25-26 school year. If you are age 4 by September 1st, you would then qualify for universal transitional kindergarten. So really would be a classroom of 4-year-olds. And there's some things that are changing with this dynamic as well, as you can imagine, because you're really servicing a different developmental age in the classroom. It's going to require a teacher to student ratio that's 1 to 12. So our current TK program operates in a 1 to 24. So the 1 to 12 for 22-23. And then there is some language based on budget appropriations that would eventually, for the 23-24 school years and beyond, potentially take the ratio in the classroom down to 1 to 10. And so it doesn't have to be 2 credentialed teachers in that ratio. It can be a paraprofessional, like a teacher's instructional aide and a teacher, that really make up that 2 to 24 or 1 to 10 ratio as we see universal transitional kindergarten expand. It also specifies that the age eligibility for a TK program does not impact family eligibility for other child care and preschool programs. So this is really an additional service, a lot of wraparound service that we see some of our families or our state preschool programs. Those will still all be in operation while universal TK is around. It also establishes the pre-kindergarten planning and implementation grant program. They put aside $300 million in one-time Prop 98 funds for the California pre-kindergarten planning and implementation grant for part of that program. The money is really broken up into 2 pots. $200 million is reserved for districts to create or expand their existing programs. And so of that first pot, we've received just over $176,000 to expand our TK program, work with teachers, bring on curriculum that would be appropriate. And there's another $100 million in grants that will be administered by the California Department of Ed. And this is going to be to increase the number of highly qualified preschool and kindergarten teachers and administrators. And that's really key, because I'm going to share some credentialing requirements that are changing. So the state has put aside some money in grants for preschool teachers that want to move into the UTK realm, and also for credentialed multiple subject teachers that would like to teach universal transitional kindergarten. And so something else that's going to be just a little bit different as we look at this in a second is also the length of the day. So it's going to be a 9-hour program that parents will have access to. And so because of that, they've also put $490 million in one-time grant funds for districts for new construction. And so need to be really clear, the funds specifically are for new construction and retrofitting only, and cannot be used to purchase or lease portable buildings. Because that was some questions that we had initially got from the community too, is would we be putting some extra portables perhaps on our properties to open up space for this universal transitional kindergarten? And so those funds that are currently available cannot be used to bring portables onto your property. They're solely for new construction or retrofitting of older buildings. And so the difference between our current TK program and the new universal TK program really is in 5 areas: the age of the students, right? Because we're going to be expanding eventually to all 4-year-olds, the class size, so really taking down that teacher to student ratio, a full day program, which I'll talk a little bit more about, the credentialing of teachers, which is changing, and also a standardized curriculum that really is preschool aligned. So universal TK is a 9-hour program. Like kindergarten, it will operate a full academic school day, but the state's new expanded learning opportunities program also requires that districts offer a 9-hour school day for this program, which can include before and after class services. So we have made no decisions here in our school district of what that 9 hours will look like. We're actually formed a committee that's required by the grant funding, but just to give the public an idea, these are some sample schedules that are posted through CDE. It could look like an 8 to 1:30 regular school day, which is a typical kindergarten time at some of our campuses. And then where we extend after school services from 1:30 to 5 p.m. You could also look at a model that has an hour of before school services, providing that childcare opportunity for our families from 7 to 8. A regular school day that you would particularly see now with transitional kindergarten from 8 to 1:30, and then an after school component from 1:30 to 4. In addition to this, universal TK students would still be eligible here in this district for Kids Corner before and after school supervision. So for example, we open currently at 6:30 in the morning for our Kids Corner and we close at 6. So if your UTK day was 8 to 5, parents could still access Kids Corner from 6:30 in the morning to 8 and from 5 to 6 p.m. Mrs. Davidson, I saw your hand.
Yeah, just so the after school services as part of the full 9-hour day, that's optional, right? Like if I could take my child home at 1:30.
A parent, it is absolutely optional, but we're required to offer the 9 hours.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Great question.
If you have a 4-year-old who's there for 9 hours, I'm just speaking from personal experience, I could see meltdowns all over the campus at 4 o'clock. I'm assuming that there was some kind of, I can't imagine going back to napping, but I'm assuming there must be some rest times involved, because that's a lot for a 4-year-old.
It would be probably similar to what we do in preschool now.
So there's actually no napping or rest time in the current universal TK plan. In fact, it's pretty spelled out that there wouldn't be a nap time. However, the school day is still no longer than the regular school day.
Okay.
So this we'll talk about in a minute with the curriculum component. It's very play-based, it's very emergent. So lots of centers, lots of outside play time. So it wouldn't be longer than our school day is now for a TK student. It'd be more similar to what we see our CDC students do, where we offer that 6:30 in the morning to 6 p.m. And parents pick up and go with their child. Our basic teaching time in our CDC program is 8 in the morning till about lunchtime, and then maybe an hour of after play, one after their nap time. So it's really going to be a merging of what our current TK is, along with the early preschool domains for 4-year-olds. And so it's definitely different than what our current transitional kindergarten program is, and definitely will look more like our preschool program does for families.
I'm just, my heart's going out for those 4-year-olds. I'm sorry. And the parents have to deal with kids.
So something that's also changing with this is the credentialing requirements. So for next school year, because this is going to be seen as the 14th year of school, similar to a transitional kindergarten program. Now, a teacher needs a multiple subject teaching credential. But in the out years, 2020, the 23-24 school year and beyond, the new credentialing requirements will come into play. The teacher will need to have a multiple subject teaching credential, and then one of those following 3 criteria. They'll have to have 24 units of ECE or child development or combination of both. Professional experience with preschool children comparable to 24 units of ECE or child development. And so we haven't received the template from the state yet, or the rubric that shows us how we would account experience for units. Or a teacher could possess a child development permit issued by the CCTC. So even in the credentialing requirements, I think you can see the blend of what an elementary school teacher would have, or a current TK teacher with that multiple subject teacher credential, blended with what a current preschool teacher would have when you look at possessing one of those 3 sub-criteria below with the child development ECE or child development permit. In addition, there's some grandfathering exemptions to the new legislation. So current TK teachers who have been teaching TK since 2015 will have a grandfathered exemption to the new requirements and are only required to have a multiple subject teaching credential. So that's where you really see that comparable work with the same age children come into play. And then the state's Commission on Teacher Credentialing is developing a proposal that would create a pathway for preschool teacher permit holders to gain the preparation they need to teach TK without completing the requirements for a multiple subject teaching credential. However, it's very clear that the hiring decisions are left to local school districts. And so we also hear that there's going to be a fast track way for current multiple subject teachers to get that work permit from the Child Development Center. So we're still waiting for that information to come. Obviously, those are requirements that we are not under next school year, but in the 23-24 school year. So probably the largest change other than the credentialing is the environment and the curriculum that's really specifically outlined in this assembly bill. The TK classroom environment should be engaging, promote movement, and be responsive to the diverse backgrounds and experiences of transitional kindergartners. Throughout the day, young students should be actively engaged in play-based activities that are connected to theme-based integrated curriculum. So really align with that emergent curriculum that we see in the preschool classroom. And then the TK learning domains, social emotional, English language arts, math, and ELD really are the primary focus of the curricula for universal TK. So really the alignment between the preschool learning foundations and the California Kindergarten Common Core Standard. So really is a blend. Students in universal TK will not receive a report card like an elementary student, but will be measured on the DRDP that's currently used with our preschool students. So looking at those developmental milestones and progress towards them in lieu of achievement marks or progress towards standards. So really more aligned in the assessment or accountability component to what we see in a preschool classroom in terms of reporting to families and teachers documenting and working with students inside the classroom. And so our current TK curriculum will need to be revised to be aligned with the preschool emergent curriculum. So we have already had a meeting with all of our teachers who'd be interested, our current TK teachers. We advertised out to all of our elementary teachers. We did a very similar presentation to really just educate our staff about the opportunities that are before us. Have some of our staff work with our human resources department to see if units they have on their transcript or work experience may also make them eligible to teach universal TK in the out years. And then really our next steps in planning will be to determine the number of TK classrooms that we'll need for next school year, 22-23. Really working with human resources and those teachers that are interested to determine eligibility for teaching TK. And then really forecasting if any additional positions may be needed for next school year. And then Education Services and our Child Development Center have already really created a partnership to lead our TK curriculum committee and focus on our administrators as well. I know myself, I'm new to the learning of preschool. It's not something that is in my wheelhouse or that I spent years, preparing for. If you had a multiple subject teaching credential, you didn't really focus on preschool learning. So that part of that funding is also to help bring our administrators, our curriculum coordinators and people at the district office as well, up to speed on what, a vibrant universal TK classroom would look like. So I'd love to answer any questions the board may have. Mrs. Catula?
Yes, Mrs. Reed, I know that currently if we have openings in our current TK class and a child get birthday passes and they're eligible for it, then we will allow them to come mid-semester at the semester or when they're become age eligible. Would any of that flexibility be in the UTK program? Or would it be when you're in the fourth grade, 4-year-old class, you're in the 4-year-old class and
So
or do we not know?
So I think what we know up to this point has been really clear is that those dates are going to be really held true in terms of us receiving funding for a student. So for universal transitional kindergarten for next school year, that would be September 2nd to February 2nd that you are turning 5 in that age zone. If there becomes more leeway, I'm sure we're still learning. Every assistant student meeting I have, they have a speaker that's sharing more information about what UTK would look like. But I think it will also be difficult. It's also going to be numbers oriented, right? You saw the staffing change. So it's also going to be
staffing and the 9-hour day, and there's a lot of other components.
Yeah, I actually, when you were during your presentation, I was thinking, we're going to lose that flexibility that we now can offer to our families just because there are so many other rules that we have to follow and services we have to provide.
Well, in reality, right now, we haven't allowed them, if they have a birthday, for the most part, past February 1st. So with the cutoff is now February 2nd. So they will actually be able to enroll in August or at the start of the school year, rather than waiting to enroll after the new year. So in some ways, so for those families, which has been our traditional policy, they'll actually get the benefit of enrolling from the very start of the school.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Hill?
So will the ADA be the same per student?
You know, they haven't really talked about that. Elvia, have they touched on that in your meetings?
I have not, but I would assume that it would.
Okay,
They
but
have-
that's a lot more staffing.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, more staffing.
Yeah.
I would
For a
assume
longer
we are
period of
recruiting.
For a longer period of time.
They have talked about about expanding the LCFF to add another grade level for that. And then that additional staffing doesn't necessarily mean it has to be 2 teachers. It could be an instructional aide, kind of like the preschool model is with the teacher and that. But yes, we think there's going to have to be some grade level span adjustments for that, because it's also for 9 hours as opposed to K through 5. It's a typical 6-7 hour day.
Right. So, and then I know this is a very, very tough question. Do we have any kind of projection of how many students we think we may get?
The only projection that we can make that would be accurate is we've queried our residents that are currently enrolled in our our preschool program, our CDC program, that fit into this window next school year. It's really hard to tell in the community how many families are accessing a private preschool and their children would be eligible for this. The only reliable data we have would be our current residents who attend our CDC program and birthdays fall within that range.
But I do want to remind, but one of the things that we have approved at one of our previous board meetings is to use a demographer to help us with our enrollment projections. I believe it's Decision Insight. And so that has been a question when Galicia, Dr. Fraser, and myself met with the groups. Could they help us with the TK? They believe they will be able to have some data, but again, it'll just be a projection.
Great. And then classrooms, you talked about how the classrooms have to have this certain level of engagement and movability and so on and so forth. Is that going to take any construction or any, I imagine it would take soft things like desks and that kind of stuff, but is it going to take any construction?
We don't believe it will have any construction. Currently, those aren't grants or funds that we're seeking, but definitely soft items, because it will look much more similar to our preschool classroom with open rug space, centers, round tables, not desks and large tables like you might see in a TK classroom now. A TK classroom now really is geared to cover the first half of the kindergarten standards. So we're really working with a TK student, by about 6 or 8 weeks in, as we would a kindergarten student, really working on more academic behaviors, still coupled with social emotional, where this is really a shift over to that emergent play based curriculum and focus with the preschool alignment of the foundation curriculum. So it will look much more like your preschool classroom, but I think really meet the needs of students. And I know our staff will do a fantastic job in making that switch. And no one better to do that than teachers who have been teaching TK. Most of them have been kindergarten or first grade teachers and really understand this progression of that early childhood development.
Great, thank you. Any board have, Mrs. Davidson?
So they're supposedly projecting teacher shortages. We know we fill it with stuff. Are they planning it for state universities? Are they working with state universities and the education, schools of education to inspire or provide these kinds of classes for multiple subject candidates?
So I know they're adding a certificate at most of the teacher programs that we've heard from to gain their child development permit simultaneously to the multiple subject teaching credential. But everything that's really been shared with us from CDE through Orange County Department of Ed has been a focus on preparing current preschool teachers to move into a UTK classroom. Because if you think about it, if you're getting a free preschool or a UTK at your public school, some of the paid for schools may not have the same enrollment, or even our own preschool program. Or the CDC may not have the same enrollment. So you will have a group of preschool educators that might not have a multiple subject teaching credential, but definitely have the experience and knowledge of working with this age of child. So most of what we've heard has been a focus on getting that workforce up and ready to meet the requirements of teaching UTK, and focusing on teachers like Mrs. Schmitz here. She's a transitional kindergarten teacher. And so if you're not grandfathered into the system, how can we fast track in that next year and a half to get someone the units and or permit they need to continue to teach TK? So that's most of the focus we've heard has been in those two arenas.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Thank you very much,
Perfect. Thank you so
Mrs. Reed. Wonderful, and exciting. So we are going to move into our next presentation, which Mr. CJ Nolan, the Director of Facilities, Maintenance, Operation, and Transportation, is going to provide for us on our amazing facilities and what's been going on. Oh, facilities use framework, because we have a lot of facilities at the district that are used by different groups within our community. And so this is something that we tabled for a little bit while we were dealing with many of the other things that came up in our district. So CJ, thank you very much for joining us and taking the time.
Just real quickly, we did remember the board has worked through the user groups.
Yes.
I don't think that we're going to be presenting rates tonight,
Okay.
but we'll get more feedback since it's been almost a year. But CJ will give us some ideas to get input from the board to further move this along, and we will keep presenting these at upcoming board meetings to hopefully approve rates soon, which he'll talk about in the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Pulver, for that clarification.
Madam President, honorable members of the board, thank you for allowing me to present on facility use rates. As we get going on this, since it has been a while, I really wanted to start off with going where we have been and where we currently are at with establishing our facility use rates. So when doing this, there's really three core components of facility use, and two of them we've already covered in previous workshops. The first one would be the direct cost of facilities. Now, when you're looking at this, it's really how much does it cost to maintain and operate the facility that is available for rent or that a user group would use. The direct cost, also known as the actual cost, is the amount the district spends to maintain and operate the facilities. So it's the 100% total cost that the district spends for that facility. The second item is the grouping assignments. Now, the question with grouping assignments is typically, how does the district really want to differentiate between its user groups, or how does it want to prioritize or encourage certain aspects to those user groups? It also allows us to furthermore assign different rates or scheduling prioritizations depending on how we separate those different grouping assignments. And where we're currently at for today is the rate assignments. So the rate assignments really involve the two previous categories in terms of how much of the direct cost would the district like to charge to each grouping assignment? So the rate assignments determine how much of the direct cost is applied. And you could, that can range from how you want to prioritize each of the grouping assignments. So as we continue, I really wanted to just recap on how we establish our direct cost and what that direct cost entails. So if you look on the left-hand side, the direct cost is first established by obtaining our operating costs, our program costs, and our capital costs, which is then divided by the square footage of the facility available for rent. So when we do that, we have 5 different typical types of facilities. We have grass fields, turf fields, pools, building spaces, and hardtop areas. Those square footage rates are then divided by the usable hours, or how many hours in a year that space is available for rent. So this would be like after school or on a weekend. And then that, once you divide by that 1,800, that is how you get your hourly rate for a rental fee. So really, to expand on the 3 categories that are involved with making up that direct cost, we have our operating costs, which include our utilities, our maintenance and operations salaries, custodial salaries, campus security costs, supplies and equipment, and any specialized building management, like if it's a pool, you would have the chlorine or any other items that are specific to that facility. Further on, we have our programming costs, which is the facility use management system, and our admin and secretarial salaries and benefits, which is like the district office or any administration that isn't necessarily tied to that facility, but is involved with that. And lastly, we have the capital costs. So these are the annual costs needed to keep the facility in a state of good repair. And these costs are annualized for the facility's replacement and the construction costs for that facility. So it has a built-in depreciation also for the facility. So the capital costs are really able to ensure that you are able to keep that facility in a state of good repair and hopefully replace it as needed in the future. So as you look at the costs associated with each of our 5 categories, what I did is I totaled the bottom, and you can really see how much of each category encapsulates that total direct cost. So you can see our operating costs are roughly 32% of the total direct costs. Our program costs are about 1%, and our capital costs are around 67%.
Can I ask a quick question before we go too much further? So we had here that the turf fields were like 2.7 at $2.01 per square foot, and we're talking about the capital cost on the turf fields. We're supposed to, if there's a great deal of cost, like every 10 years, is that correct? To rejuvenate them, and aren't we kind of coming up on that with our
at the high school?
At the high school,
we're getting pretty close. I would say in the next 2 to 3 years, or maybe 1 to 2 years now at this point. And that replacement cost is really where that capital, the capital costs would be.
Okay, so that's where.
Yeah. So if you look on this slide, you can see for the turf fields, the operating costs are really low because it is a turf field. We don't have to mow it. We don't have to, there's not as much groundwork that goes into it. But then you can see the capital costs. Now that rate is a rate that's divided along the lifetime of the turf field.
Oh, okay.
So it's annualized. So over like the 10-year lifespan, that will give the capital costs would create the opportunity to replace that facility.
Turf fields are a lot less expensive than grass fields, from what I'm seeing.
The installation is not. The operating cost is a lot less expensive. And for our district specifically, we have a lot less turf fields. So that's why the number is much lower.
Oh, okay, because it's cumulative.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm like, let's go do all turf field.
Oh, you'd have people happy.
Oh, I know, yes,
They
I
would be
know.
extremely happy.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
No
CJ.
problem. And the next slide, I really wanted to recap on the grouping assignments that almost a year ago, we reviewed as with the board, and we established that what the groups that we really want to differentiate and prioritize are our own district sponsor groups, LAIF, city partners, which would include the city of Los Alamitos, the city of Seal Beach, and the Rossmore community. And then group 4 is how we begin to divide our nonprofit groups. So in group 4, we wanted to prioritize our community-based nonprofit volunteer staffing groups. And in group 5, we wanted to prioritize our community-based nonprofit with paid staffing. And then group 6 would include all other nonprofit, and then group 7 would include for-profit user groups. And just to reiterate, these are the groups that would be renting the facility. So before we begin thinking about how we want to take those direct costs and apply a rate to any of these groups, I really wanted to show the board how other school districts, how other neighboring school districts are differentiating and separating and how they're assigning rates to each of their groups. One of the things that as we go over this, you'll see every school district differentiates its user groups slightly different to what's important to that school district. So the first school district that I have is Tustin Unified. As you can see in group A, it's our school related groups where there's no charge during school business hours, but if it is after hours or at a time where like there's no custodian, they will have a $68 an hour with a 3-hour minimum charge. So that would be most comparable to like our LAIF or our boosters or PTA type group. In group B is a nonprofit groups that benefit students. So for Tustin Unified, that would be community-based groups that are also youth focused because they're looking for that benefit for students. You can see in group B, they're charging roughly the same as what they are charging group C, which is all other nonprofits. So you could see that they're charging the same. So that indicates that they're using these groups to differentiate in terms of prioritization instead of a rate.
Yeah, got it.
And then lastly, we have group D, which is all of the others, for-profit groups. And you can see in group D, it's not quite exactly double, but it ranges right below there.
Can I ask a quick, so group B, nonprofit groups that benefit students, is it students within our district or just benefit children?
So this is
That's
Tustin
Tustin's
Unified, so it would be groups that benefit their students.
And then, so in group, other nonprofits and then group D, for-profit, like how would you differentiate between like the clubs or like Friday Night Lights where
That's for profit.
So
it is for-profit, yeah.
Friday Night
non-
Lights is a nonprofit.
nonprofit.
But,
So they would be,
But they have paid staff.
and the people who run it make a lot of money.
Right, so that's why when we were establishing our groups, we really wanted to differentiate between our nonprofits with paid staffing and our nonprofits with volunteers.
but what
Whereas-
you'll see what CJ is highlighting is there's, over time, we'll have to differentiate. The board will have to give us direction. Is that groupings for prioritization or is the grouping for rates? Because most districts have about 4 rates. They don't have 7, just because they have 7 groups that they'll have 7 rates. So, but we'll see what the input you guys give us.
Right, and as I said, each district will group their users as they would like to prioritize that's unique to that district. So on the next school district, we have Tustin Unified, Irvine Unified, excuse me. Where you can see they only have 3 groups. So they have group A, which is school related groups or other nonprofits that directly support the district. So that would be any nonprofit that is like a booster club or like LAIF would be similar to here, where it's similar to how Tustin was doing it, where there's no charge when the custodian is already scheduled, But if it's after operational hours, they would be charging that custodial rate. And then the next group they have is nonprofit groups with 51% or more local participation. So you could tell with Irvine, they wanted to really prioritize that local community-based nonprofits. And then group C would be all other nonprofits and for-profit groups.
Who monitors that? So if they're residents, the group B nonprofit with local participation, would that be, who monitors that?
We would monitor the rosters. We would request the rosters at the time of their reservation, and we would go through those rosters and make sure. I believe currently we would be looking for 70% per our previous facility use rate.
When the city and us
Right. And you use like utility bill, right?
Exactly. But for Irvine, they specifically were just wanting 51%. And then when you look at the rates between group B and C, you can see that they're prioritizing group B with about, it's rough in some cases, like if you look at the tennis courts, it's half, but in other cases, it's a little bit less than half. So group C would be their 100%, and then group B would be the lower rate, which they're prioritizing. And on the next example, we have Capistrano Unified, which has 4 different groups. Group A, which is internal and school district connected groups, which again would be like those LAIF or those booster clubs. Then they have group B, which is youth serving nonprofit groups, school serving groups, and public entities. They had a specific stipulation in their group B that the recreational sports teams could not charge more than $60 per month for that student or who that participant. And then they had a special group C for religious organizations, and then a group D for the for-profit groups or any other nonprofits that didn't fit into group B or A. You could see that in group B, they're being quite heavily prioritized, or the district is choosing to really, in a sense, subsidize those groups because they will not be incorporating their full direct cost back from that charge. And then group C and D, where group C for the religious organizations is slightly less than the for-profit groups.
And a religious organization, well, no, they would be a nonprofit with paid staff.
Depends.
Right, yeah.
Most probably
Similar,
would.
yeah.
Most would, yeah.
Yep, most probably.
So now that kind of brings us back to our user groups and how we want to tackle those rate assignments. And as Andrew mentioned earlier, just because we have different groups doesn't necessarily mean they have to have different rates. They could be different groups for prioritization in terms of scheduling and not in terms of rates, or they could have different rates. As you look at this, I wanted to also keep in mind that our operating and programming costs roughly make up about 1/3 of our direct costs, which you can see at the top. So with some of these groups, maybe the board would want to look at it and say, you know, this group is a local group and may not, maybe they shouldn't have to pay for the capital cost. Maybe they should only pay or much of the capital cost. Maybe they should only be paying the operating, programming, and a portion of the capital costs. So as you can see at group 1, we have our district sponsored meetings, activities, events, including in-season high school athletics activities and PTA. So these are pretty much our internal groups that we would not be charging. So that's why you can see we have a 0%. And then if you look down, skip down to group 6, where we have all other nonprofits, typically per the CSBA guidelines, in their recommendation, they have an all other nonprofit group, and that's where you would typically charge your 100% direct cost to. Now, if the board wishes, we could charge a different amount to that group. I'm just really placing that there so we can concentrate on the areas that we need to figure out the rates. So really from groups 2 through 5, we want to figure out really, how do we want to prioritize each of these groups? Is it in terms of scheduling? Is it in terms of dollar amount? And the first group we'd be looking at on this would be our non-district meetings, activities, and events, including LAIF and booster organizations that directly support a group classified under Group 1. So these would be nonprofits or boosters or anyone that would directly support one of our school sites or the district.
So just real quickly, if each group was a different rate, you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 different rates, where most districts seem to hover between, what did you say?
3 or 4.
Between 3 and 4. We could have 6 different rates, or you could use rates similar, like group, for illustration purposes only, group 2 and 3, the rate's the same, but the priority of access is higher to 2 than to 3, etc. If you wanted to condense some of that.
Exactly. So as you recall in our grouping assignments, we have our next group, which is the cities of Los Alamitos and Seal Beach, which, as Andrew had said, we could choose to have a different rate, or we could choose to kind of collapse some of these groups in terms of the rate. Group 4 is our community-based nonprofit with volunteer staffing. And then Group 5 is our community-based nonprofit with paid staffing. So as we continue, I just wanted to clearly illustrate what those, with some of our most used facilities, what those operating costs, those programming costs, and those capital costs, and how they make up that 100% direct cost. So as you guys may know, our large practice fields are almost booked throughout the year. And we're currently charging $28.92 with the OC average throughout Orange County of $24.50 being charged. Our operating costs for those fields is $18.81. Our programming cost is about 59 cents, and our capital cost is $39.39. And that's all per hour, which gives us a total direct cost of $58.79 per hour for us to, it's really the district's direct cost for that facility throughout the year.
Why is ours so much higher than the OC average?
The current fee or the direct cost?
The total direct cost is almost twice as much as the OC average.
Because many districts do not charge their full direct cost to the nonprofit groups.
Got it.
So they're probably charging a portion of the operating and the capital,
Okay.
which in the next table, he'll illustrate that an
Okay,
Oh,
example a little
great.
bit later.
Thank you.
Right, and as you can see, really, when you compare our current rates to what on most of these items, when you compare our current rates to what the operating and programming costs are, our current rates are a little bit higher than what our operating and programming costs would be combined. So that capital cost is really that 2/3 that makes the rate jump up quite a bit.
Got it. Thank you.
So on this next slide, I really just want to emphasize that these rates and amounts are shown just for illustrative purposes of what we could do, not necessarily what we should do, but hopefully gives us a foundation or a starting place to make some adjustments moving forward. So you can see along the top, we have all of our groups 2 through 7, and then those same most used facilities that we have for rent. We have our current fee and the OC average listed on the left. And then we have samples of really just taking numbers and throwing sample numbers out there of what would it look like if we charge group 2 50%, group 3 55%, group 4 70%, and then group 5 80%. And then when you get back to group 6, it really like I said, it's the CSBA's recommendation that we, for 100% of our direct costs, to be charged to all other nonprofits. So when you think about all other nonprofits, really that would be nonprofits that aren't community-based, aren't from Los Alamitos, because we really want to reserve our fields for our local community, because they're the ones that are putting the time and effort and the dollars into our school district.
And taxpayers that have given,
Right.
raised funds, the Melaroos, et cetera,
Right.
wanting to make sure that they get the benefit of that as well.
Absolutely. So as you look across our large practice field again, you can see at 50% of our direct cost to our district partners, that is roughly what our current fee is now, about $1 or 70 cents or so, 50 cents or so more. As we move forward, you can see that the 55% example is a little bit higher, and then group 4 is at 70%, it's at 41. So that could be a jump where we really want to make sure that we're letting our user groups know well ahead of time. There's even options of maybe incrementally doing it, however we want to proceed. But it is something we would want to message to our user groups that, hey, these rates will be increasing, so that they're able to account for it when they're collecting their club fees or whatever fees that they might charge to the participant.
And these aren't recommendations. They're just ideas to help you start a conversation. It doesn't mean it has to go from 55 to 70, from 70 to 80. It's easier to have the conversation to show you as opposed to not. And then you can kind of get understanding the value of pro and con of different things.
Exactly. And as we said earlier, there may be certain groups where we feel like they should be paying the same rate, and then maybe we want to just have them prioritize in terms of schedule in lieu of dollars. And really, as we wrap this up, there's several things to consider, and I know we've touched on each of them already, but I just wanted to recap a couple of them. Should we be looking at these grouping assignments as primarily used for prioritization with condensed rating assignments, meaning that we have fewer rating assignments, like 3 or 4? As Andrew mentioned earlier, our neighboring school districts typically utilize 3 to 4 different rates, while they may have other groups listed as a prioritization with the same rate. And then the next thing is, do we want to subsidize the capital costs for certain user groups, or at least subsidize a portion of those capital costs for certain user groups? As you may have seen earlier, we are prioritizing our community-based nonprofit groups. So perhaps we would want to subsidize some of those capital costs for our community-based groups. And then, as you saw on that last slide, would we want to apply a sliding scale percentage rate of our direct costs, like the example shown in the previous slide? With those, as Andrew was also saying earlier, those numbers can really go however we want to, and that's totally within our control. Next, how often do we want to recalculate our direct costs? It is recommended that we do so every 2 years. So one of the nice things, once we establish a percentage rate, we could easily recalculate our direct costs by working with our fiscal department and just adjust it as we need to based on our actual costs. So the goal really is to establish a rate that is sustainable for us as a district, and then we'll be able to continue to update our direct costs and continually update our fee every 2 years. Lastly, we really want to look at how and when we're going to be implementing any changes to the rates. Like I said, we want to make sure that we're giving our user groups plenty of notice when we're doing this. So we're really going with an implementation goal of January 2023. I know that sounds like a long time out, but a lot of these groups do have to advertise, talk to their participants, and really coordinate their whole season around these rates. And they do serve, a lot of them do serve our local community and our students. So we want to make sure we give them ample time to be able to do that.
So our goal would be to get the rates assigned in the order sometime this spring, within the next 2, max 3 months.
Right.
And I hope we could do it sooner, but there's different things. That way the community has ample time to make any of those adjustments that we won't implement until January, but then we've really had an outreach to individuals, so feels like there's no surprise.
Could you do things like this, just for example, I'm looking at ours, if you had the 55% direct cost for group 3 and 70 for group 4, could you put 3 and 4 together and then it's a 15% difference, just so basically at like 63% or whatever, and that they would split the difference if you're trying to combine groups. So instead of 55% for 3 and 70% for 4, put 3 and 4 together and make it 62%.
Absolutely. The way we would assign those rates or even establish them is totally within the board's control, and we would be able to really assign them however we would see fit.
I think that cost of 70%, 80% is probably too high as well. It's just for illustration.
Yeah.
One of the things, anything over, if you think about it, as CJ was saying, our direct cost and our operational cost is about a third. So anything over 30%, you're starting to charge some portion of a capital improvement cost, right? And if you think about it as group 4 and 5, and even group 3, they are all our community people.
Yes.
They have been raising funds for tax dollars. Their property tax dollars go to the district, because the other competing interest is, should district dollars subsidize groups as opposed to taking away educational dollars? But in this case, we are also, that's why they almost anything over really that 50% and kind of squeezing them within will still honor some of the community stuff that they've done. So we're not recommending 70, 80. It just helps to have a conversation to, you know, so.
And I think that I was just saying, if you take the group with the lower rate and the group with the higher rate, if they have commonalities and you could group them together, you wouldn't have to necessarily lose all your money if you put it right in between the two percentages.
Absolutely. So we could definitely, for the next workshop, work up like certain rates that maybe we would want to see with some of our most used facilities. And we could break it up however we would like to.
What would help us a little bit is to know, do you want us to consider use the user groups for both prioritization and rates, or to lump some of the rates together? If you lump some, it seems like most districts would lump 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Late partnerships, boosters, and cities. But you could also do a model there where it's just a slight bump of 5%. That's why we illustrated that for you. If you lump together a group 4 and 5, but then what I've heard some members of the board talk about is, yeah, but then nonprofits who are community-based, who have paid staff, are getting charged the same amount as nonprofits who have volunteer staff. So you might want to differentiate that, but maybe it's not a difference of 10% and it's not at 70. Maybe it's at 60 and 65. I'm making these numbers up. It's that kind of feedback that would help us to move this along a little bit more, and from all of you.
So I understand how does Leif feel about being group 2 instead of being group 1?
So Leif was they had come during the public comments when we presented the groups. They did think that they had requested to be a separate group from the city, but they are not part of the district. They support the district, so we need to have an arm's length away. So I believe they had advocated to be in 2, but to be a separate group from the city, from my recollection.
Okay. And then have we haven't started to inform any of these user groups that we're working on this because we don't know where we are.
We haven't informed them of any specific rates, but a lot of them are aware that we're having these discussions.
We've been talking about it for a year.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good.
Looking for feedback, I could see combining 2 and 3 with a comment that the district partners get priority for request or registration, or however you would say it. And I'm not going to discuss the amount of money we should be charging them. But I think those are two groups that we have always worked really closely with. And Lake only exists to help us. So I think they deserve some kind of recognition or acknowledgement that we appreciate what they do, obviously, and we're trying to work with them. So I would want to somehow say that they have priority over whatever the city would want. And I don't think there'd actually be very many conflicts between what Lake wants and needs and uses on our school sites and what the city wants. So
There really isn't. But when the way it's set up now, when those would occur, we could get prioritization in terms of scheduling to LAFE or those district partners, while charging the same rate to both groups 2 and 3, which I also think is a good idea because they are non-revenue generating groups.
Right, yeah. So. Okay. Any other questions from the board? Thank you very much, CJ. And so I imagine we're going to keep this on our agenda for a while, for the next couple weeks, next couple meetings.
And I'll provide an update and then we can review as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So anything else left to go over on that?
No.
We need more.
I would just have you, when you have some feedback, even if it's when I meet one-on-one with you, that would be helpful to us.
Okay.
So we know how to move forward with the next steps to move forward.
So we're going to move on to our consent items, and I see that I have 13F and 13K as polls. So I am looking for a motion for 13A through E, G through J, and L through U.
So moved.
I need a second. Mrs. D'Angelo?
Yes. Mr. Fayette?
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson?
Aye.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mrs. Vituli?
Aye.
Mrs. Hill?
Aye. I would now look for a motion for the item 13F, which is the approval of overnight extended field trip for Los Alamitos High School Model United Nations. And do I have a motion on that? And I didn't ask for any discussion.
Second.
Is there any discussion on this
Yes.
item?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson.
I pulled this item. This is for, to approve a trip for our MUN group to go to Berkeley for their 70th annual MUN meeting, which is absolutely gigantic. I think if families maybe they hear groups, they hear clubs, they hear teams, but Model United Nations to me is an incredibly unique group. These kids work so hard. It's the advisor is Maria Kipta. Kiptia. Thank you. She's absolutely phenomenal. She gives heart and soul. But this Model United Nations is an educational simulation, and it's usually done on weekends at different schools, and schools from all over the area and outside of the area come. Each student, the schools have their own teams. They become delegates or representatives of a country, person, or organization. They do deep dive research into a political social issue, poverty, war, border disputes, water rights, all kinds of things throughout the world. And they do these deep dive researches, and they come as representatives. And when they address the issues, they show up, first of all, in complete business dress. The boys are in suits and ties. The girls are dressed like they're going to work in any kind of corporation. They take this very seriously, and they work incredibly hard. I think they must put as much work into this as they would put into an AP written assignment that would, be incredibly valuable to their GPAs. But they work together to solve a world issue with other delegates, and they debate with students from other schools. One might represent Ethiopia and another one Syria, and they have different vested interests in a particular issue. And so they debate, and they bring their research and their knowledge and their information to the table. They learn about diplomacy, international relations, and actually how the UN functions itself. They strengthen their research skills, writing skills, speaking skills, and debating, critical thinking, teamwork, leadership. I think this is one of our finest organizations, and I know we've all gone and watched them on the Saturdays. It's astounding to me how professionally every single, they meet in different rooms, every single meeting is, and how seriously these kids take it. I know one of my girls, who was one of my students, former students, was Jewish, and she ended up being assigned a position that was arguing sort of an ethnic genocide. And she said, you know, she came from a very defensive position relating being Jewish and the Holocaust. And she said by the end of it, having to be on the other side of an argument, and it was based largely on economy, she said she learned so much about the opposite side's perspectives, and it gave her a better understanding of what she valued and how she could debate it. So I just want to say MUN, she actually went on to be a page in the US House of Representatives. So these kids do great things. I want to thank Mrs. Kiptia, and I want to really applaud these students. And I hope when they go to Berkeley, they come back first place winners. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Davidson. I believe I have a first and I have a second. And so Mrs. D'Angelo.
Mr. Fayette.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Forehand.
Aye.
Ms. Kutuli.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill.
Aye. So the next item I would ask for a motion on is 13K approval with BSN Sports.
Second.
And discussion, Mr. Fayette, I believe you had some questions. You pulled this one.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this to attention and hopefully I got my information correct. Is we're leveraging our higher profile to get a better deal on our equipment. I believe they're going to be running a sports store where they buy all the jerseys and the sweatshirts and all of that. We will get part of the proceeds back to help our program. There's a 2-for-1 deal in the first year of the program. I just hope that this gets relayed out to all the booster clubs so that they know how to take advantage of this stuff, and it hopefully will benefit all of our athletic programs. And like I said, I think it's pretty good idea to leverage your position that you have when it's at the highest. So I just wanted to bring that to attention to everyone.
That's great. Thank you.
And you're not being forced. It's not being forced to change. This is just going to help. It's not forcing anybody to buy new uniforms. So I had to do it.
Any, did you want to address or ask Dr. Pulver or Mrs. Reed any questions?
No,
think I've got
we get these ahead of time, and Dr. Pulver and I had a very lovely text and email exchange.
Good.
That he really clarified a lot of my concerns and questions, and it's a much better program than I originally anticipated when I first read it over. So thank you for the clarification, and I just want to bring that to attention.
You're welcome.
That's awesome. So I'll call for a vote. Mrs. D'Angelo?
Mr. Fayette.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Forehand.
Aye.
Ms. Kutuli.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill.
Aye. So now we move on to action items, and we are having a presentation and approval of school forward funding plans, and Mrs. Delicia.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Good evening, members of the board. Yes, thank you so much for joining us today. So I'm really excited and just so in awe of our community parents, our boosters, our friends of groups, because they really do go above and beyond to provide support for our students. And so we are very happy to bring forward again, like we do every year, our forward funding plans for the 22-23 fiscal year. We normally begin this process in November, where principals and the parent organizations work together, work collaboratively to figure out what kind of staffing they're going to have to support the media centers at some of our campuses. And the reason why this is a little bit earlier than normal is because the governor signed AB 438, where we are required to if we have any layoff notices for classified employees, we're going to have to do it at the same time as we do certificated. So that's the reason why we really had to really push our principals and push our friends up to provide us with these plans so early in advance. But it really does help us know which employees and staffing we're going to have for next year. So really, I'm so grateful to our community for that help that we get. So our Friends of Hopkinton is committed to help us forward fund for next year a part-time STEM teacher as well as a part-time media center. As you can tell, we have some pictures there that illustrate the amazing work that is being happening at the media centers. Project LEAP at Lee is also forward funding a position for part-time STEM next year. And additionally, a part-time media center, IA. Last year, they were unable to fund it, but we are so thankful that this year they are. So Friends of LAE is funding a part-time STEM teacher as well as a part-time media IA. And you see these kiddos having a wonderful time. Friends of Weaver is supporting us with a part-time STEM teacher, a part-time media center, IA. And unfortunately, this year, they are not funding a response to intervention teacher and our IT teacher. They're not going to be funding it for next year.
And that was new this year,
Right.
just really the Weaver families and wanted to support that this year with coming out of the hybrid into the full. So they was not a position they normally funded, but saw the need. And once again, our parents really partner with us to provide that additional support.
At McGaw, Project Seek is forwarding a part-time STEM teacher and a part-time media center IA. And then in addition to that, they also contract with LAIF to staff a position, a part-time art teacher. And our Friends of Rossmore is contracting with LAIF to staff a position, part-time STEM lab teacher. They've done this for the last maybe three or four years. Yes. Which the employee is not a district employee, but rather a LAIF employee. And then we can't forget our wonderful relationship that we have with LAIF. They've just really gone above and beyond again to support our STEAM initiatives. This year, they're providing approximately $75,000 to $90,000 in STEAM grants for all sites. And then as well, they've also committed to support us with our well space centers at the high school. That's over $100,000. And then in addition to that, this year, they provided support for the cost of the wellness counselors, and it was $25,000.
And they had earmarked middle school to support the additional support at middle school for the wellness counselor. 20 doesn't cover it, but it certainly helps with the funding.
And that's pretty much it. I want to thank our community for that. Yeah, that's always a good one. Any questions?
So the well space center at LoSal is we don't know the cost yet on that. We're still in design.
We don't, it should be going to DSA by the end of this month, and then we can go to bid. We think it'll be within the 100,000 or a little bit more perhaps. February 11th is late gala, and they're using the February as fundraising, all for mental health and the Well Space Center at Los Alamitos High School.
Do we know how many counselors we'll have available for that site? Has that been verbally?
So it's this, we've been using the same counseling support we already have. They'll just be housed within there. And so at our high school, we have 7 counselors, psychologists combined, or not combined.
We have 6 guidance counselors. Plus we have Mrs. Schaefer in the College Career Center. We have a 40% LCSW, as well as 100% LCSW and 2 full-time school psychologists.
That sounds like a lot.
It is.
I mean, there's a lot of kids there. So
Yeah.
And as you've been seeing, I think it's later or was in the consent, military has provided a counselor at McGaw. We just got where they'll support one at the middle school for next year, I believe. And who knows if they'll matriculate that up to support our military families at the high school down the road. One can only hope.
And Dr. Pulver took a little bit of my thunder because I did want to say that, excuse me, but I did want to say that we really, since we didn't do communication, this is our last meeting before the fundraiser, that anybody who wants to support LAIF, support the Wellness Center, and a really amazing man is being honored as king. And so Dave Ackley, so please do find it on the Lake page, support, come have a good time. So we will need to approve this, so I will need a motion.
Second.
And any other discussion? We discussed before we even moved. Mrs. D'Angelo.
Mr. Payette.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Forehand.
Aye.
Ms. Cattouli.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill.
Aye. So we're moving on to our next item, which is the presentation and approval of the district's 2020, 2021 financial audit. And Mrs. I'm getting very late.
Alicia.
Yeah. I had it right first time.
Thank you, Madam President, esteemed members of the board. So I'm here today to present a quick overview of our financial audit process and really to give you, to facilitate the approval of our financial audit, which will be board approved tonight. So really, as defined, auditing is a collection and evaluation of evidence to support an opinion of the reliability of our financial reports. Auditors and the district management have responsibilities. The auditors have to express an opinion based on the tests they perform against our current accounting systems and accounting standards, as well as they have to present issues that they found during the process audit, which would be findings, any recommendations. The district's management has the responsibility to prepare and present the financial audits. We have to design, implement, and maintain internal controls and systems. We have to have those in place. And we also have to retain and support documents to support our financial statements. We also have to correct any findings or any recommendations that the auditors have indicated in our audit reports. So the purpose of the financial audit is, their primary purpose is really for our independent third-party auditing firm to provide an opinion whether our district's financial statements are presented in conformity or in alignment with generally accepted accounting principles. When they come in and do the review, they really look at 4 different areas or components. They look at transparency. Is it visible? Is everything that we are accounting for visibly and readily available? Is it accurate? Is it the district transactions are they recorded correctly with no errors? Are our numbers reliable? Is the district's processes and our systems, can they be trusted, and are they dependable? And finally, they look at accessibility. Do we have the proof that shows that those funds or expenses did really occur? And do we actually provide all the documentation in a timely manner? While they perform these audits, they really look at, is anything missing? Do they have, or did the transaction really occur? Are our numbers correct? Do we really owe where we say we're gonna owe? And really, is everything that we've recorded, is it recorded in the correct place? So the audit opinion is at the conclusion, what they look at is there's 4 different components. Their opinion could be an unmodified, which there's no material or pervasive errors found. And within the modified, there's 3 different areas that they could qualify us for, is either a qualified, an adverse, or disclaimer. Within those 3 components, there's obviously material errors that are pervasive, there are misstatements, or documentation was not really able or sustained. So ultimately, our goal is to always maintain an unmodified opinion. We currently do contract with I-Bailey as our third-party auditing firm. The audit process does consist of 2 separate in-person visits. One is in March, which is our interim visit. They come in for 2 weeks. And then they also come in right after we're done with all of our year-end closing activities. They'll come in October to perform their final audit, and that'll be a 2-week visit as well. So like I said, ultimately our goal is to maintain an unmodified opinion with no material or pervasive errors. And I am so pleased and happy to report that the report that you do have is an unmodified opinion, which means that the district has met all the laws and regulations of the state and that there are no material errors or any findings that they found. So with that, we recommend approval. Thank you. And, thank you to Myra and her team. Fiscal services, I mean, I've been there, I know that. Thank you, Myra, and the fiscal services team for this amazing report. So, and with that, any questions?
Thank you. So, do we want to move first?
I don't care.
I'm gonna try to do it in the right order.
Okay.
So, do I have a motion to approve the audit as presented?
I move.
And a second? Second. Got it. Now is there discussion?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say that I really appreciate the fact actually, I probably would like to get it 2 weeks earlier so you can take the time to read through it. But when I was reading through it, I had what I felt were some pretty specific questions where I actually gave page numbers and was rather specific. And I got extremely specific answers that let me know that one thing I was thinking was correct and the other thing I was not totally correct on. And that's good for me to know that also. But I just basically wanted to thank you and your department and Myra for for answering those questions, because our fiduciary responsibility as a board member is truly one of the highest. And these are big numbers. And there's government accounting practices that do not replicate themselves in real life. And so it can be overwhelming. So I just really appreciate the openness that your department has and getting back to us when we have questions.
Absolutely, you're very welcome. And we welcome any questions you may have. I understand the audit is not, the report is not an easy read and it's not something fun to read at all times. So we welcome all the questions, so thank you.
Any other comments or questions? We'll move for a vote.
Mr. Fayette.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Forehand.
Aye.
Mrs. Cattouli.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill.
Aye. Passes 5-0. We're going to move on to the approval of the first reading of an updated board policy 6164.4, identification and evaluation of individuals for special education. Mrs. Reed.
Thank you so much, Madam President. So we're updating this so that we're compliant with recent legislation. There were only a few minor changes to language in this board policy. We added the term child find as part of the district responsibility for identification. We also clarified language between regular assessments and triennial assessments and added agencies as possible contributors to the identification, screening, and assessment process for students. This board policy really does revolve around our identification and evaluation of individuals for special education.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I do want to say this is a first reading and that these are, we're going through a process of updating a lot of our policies. So if the public sees us work through them pretty quickly, it's because it really is an updating rather than bringing forward new policies. And this is a first reading. So we'll call for a vote.
Mr. Fayette.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Forehand.
Aye.
Mrs. Cattouli.
Aye.
And Mrs. Hill.
Aye. Oh, Mrs. Reed, just stick around. So approval of the first reading of an updated board policy 6164.41, children with disabilities enrolled by their parents in private school.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Additionally, this is a first reading of an update to an existing board policy where we've identified our practice and made sure that it's clear that we have the same responsibility to identify and find those students who live within our district boundaries but are enrolled in a private school as we do to students who live within our district boundaries and enrolled in our schools.
I need a motion.
So moved.
Any discussion? I will, the first time that I learned about this policy was I saw a young lady sitting in an office in McGaw, I think it was, in a St. Hedwig's uniform. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing here? And she's like, well, they come to our schools to get evaluated. And I'm like, okay, that really opened up my eyes of,
exactly what our thing is. So, Mrs. D'Angelo will call for a vote.
Mr. Fayette,
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Forehand,
Aye.
Ms. Cattouli. Aye. Mrs. Hill.
Aye. Okie dokie, now we're gonna move to some wonderful things. So we're moving to the adoption of a resolution 2021 through 2022 Career Technical Education Month. And I have asked Mrs. Cattouli if she would be so kind to read this and talk a little bit about it.
Thank you so much, Madam President. It is my honor, it's one of my adjunct duties on being the Wellsouth Board, is that I get to represent our school district on the North Orange County Regional Occupation Program Board, which is the Career Technical Ed Consortium. It's JP 85 school districts. We've already had a little presentation on some of the classes that we have. And Madam President said maybe I should talk about the ones that our students could have access to, even though we don't offer them on our campus. And right off the top of my head, some of the most popular ones was auto mechanics and auto body, where you learn how to do the repairs and paint the cars and stuff like that. Our new e-car class, where I think I've mentioned this before, we got a grant from the, excuse me, from the state government and bought e-car kits so that the students can build an totally electric car. And then I guess the teacher takes it apart again, and then the next year the new class can come along and rebuild them. And since I have heard that you need to be extremely careful when you're dealing with totally electric cars because those batteries can kill you. So I think it's nice that we've got a kit kids can practice on. And we also have in many of the high schools within our consortium culinary programs, which are very popular. There is such a huge opportunity in the culinary field in Orange County and probably across the United States and in California, where whether you are an actual cook or not, if you want to become a restaurant manager, you need to know how to do everything. And these are just really popular classes. And every year they have, to the state of California, a contest to come up with a new lunch that follows all of the state guidelines on what food they need to have in our lunch for nutritional values. And then they're given the absurd amount of money that we are, like $2.80. I mean, some ridiculous amount. And the kids come up, and we've had classes that have actually been recognized by the state of California for coming up with lunches that the kids would like to eat. So I thought that was really kind of fun. And we also have a lot of medical profession classes. When we finish our 3-story STEM building, we will be looking at a medical pathway. And this has there's so many different aspects of this. We currently have an EMT class and the first responders class and the sports medicine class. But this would also be, if you were thinking of going into pharmacy, medicine, nursing, or one of those types of fields. So I'm looking forward to when we'll be able to get that on board. The benefit of Career Technical Ed, in my opinion, is that it takes education that you get in your classroom and it truly applies to real life, where students can see, oh, I am learning this because of this, and they can connect it to what they want to do. I have told many students, take a class, take a CTE class. If you find out you really don't like engineering, or you really don't like doing sports medicine because you have to touch somebody's bloody knee or something, it's good to find that out when you're in high school, as opposed to whether you're going to a certificate program or a 4-year program. You put a lot of time and effort and money into it, and then you discover, I really don't want to do this for 40 years. So it's always great information. I want to say right now we have, there are many careers in the world that start out with certificates of competency, kind of like the certificate that our EMT kids can take for completion if they're 18 years old. Some of the certificates you can get through Google, some of the certificates that are digital video students get. And it's a great step. It's a step getting into a office, getting into a job, and building your career, whether you go on to just more certificates or whether you decide to go in and get a 4-year degree in it. So I just think this is such a great connection between real life and education, and it's important to our kids. And I'm going to read this very shortly, meaning I'm going to cut things out. Okay, whereas profound economic and technological changes in our society are rapidly reflected in the structure and nature of work, thereby placing new and additional responsibilities on our education system. and the ever-increasing efforts of career educators, businesses, and industry to stimulate the growth and vitality of our local economy and that of the entire nation by preparing students for career fields forecast to experience the largest and fastest growth in the next decade. Now therefore be resolved that the Los Alamitos Unified School District Board of Education does hereby support and designate February 1st through February 28th, 2022 to be Career Technical Month.
Thank you, Mrs. Gattuli. And so may I have a second? So first and second, and so I will call for a vote. Mrs. D'Angelo?
Mr. Fayette.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Cohen.
Aye.
Ms. Cattouli.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill.
Aye. Okay, now we're moving on to the approval to issue school accountability report cards. And Mrs. Reed.
Thank you very much, President Hill. Tonight, we're bringing forward our annual request for approval of our 2021 School Accountability Report Card that will be published. We're required to do this by the state of California. It's in accordance with Proposition 98. And that's also a great document that sits on all of our school sites' websites. It has great information about the community the school serves, student achievement, the learning environment, resources, and demographic data about the schools as well.
Do I have a motion?
I move.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just great job.
Oh,
Great.
they're
job.
seriously
I mean, I took
interesting.
notes on just one school.
Yeah.
There's a ton of great information there. Do you know, and this might be forecasting, or you don't know, will we still be using, would we use Illuminate to we
state
tested the
assessment.
kids and did our, we got to pick our own to evaluate?
So right now, it's being shared with us that we're back on the CASP reporting cycle, which is the California Assessment Program, and we will not have the option to opt out of CASP and instead use our own district benchmark. But we still do give our benchmark 3 times a year. So we'll still have that internal data, but our students in grades 3 through 8, grade 11 will participate in the CASP.
So
And
we
that-
have again, so that's what
Yeah.
our historically one.
Yeah.
So you can look year over year
You-
how we.
You're absolutely right.
And that's 2022?
That'll be in the spring,
It is, okay.
absolutely.
Awesome. I didn't know that was back on board. So I have a first and a second, so I'll call for a vote.
Mr. Fayette.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Cohen.
Aye.
Ms. Cattouli.
Aye.
And Mrs. Hill.
Aye. We are moving on to approval of personnel commissioners, David Boyer and Virginia Wilson, along with classified staff Joe Frazier and Celeste Arellano, to attend the California Personnel Commissions Association annual conference. And we were very fortunate to have great personnel commissioners, and it was really good to see Mr. Boyer here this evening supporting our classified employee of the year. And so I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call for a vote.
Mr. Fayette.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Cohen.
Aye.
Mrs. Cattouli. Mrs. Hill.
Aye. Next, we are going to do the approval of warrants, and warrants is the checkbook of the district. And when we have meetings every 2 weeks, it's nice. It's only 29 pages.
Yeah.
And so I am looking for a motion to approve warrants.
I move to approve.
Second.
And Mrs. D'Angelo?
Mr. Fayette.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Cohen.
Aye.
Ms. Cattouli.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill.
Aye. Thought we weren't gonna have to do this time, Mrs. D'Angelo. So now we're gonna look at acceptance of donations. Just so very honored to have such a generous community, and even we have great donations, but it isn't even a portion of what happens in our schools. So year to date is $589,258.48. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Mrs. D'Angelo?
Mr. Fayette.
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Cohen.
Aye.
Ms. Cattouli.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill.
Aye. And we are down to our classified personnel report and our certificated personnel report.
And Dr. Bolden? Oh, hi. Hello, Dr. Frazier back there.
Hi. Thank you, Madam President. Yes, I'm bringing both forward the classified and certificated personnel reports tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a motion?
Move as presented.
Mrs. D'Angelo?
Mr. Fayette,
Aye.
Mrs. Davidson,
Aye.
Mr. Forehand,
Aye.
Ms. Cattouli,
Aye.
Mrs. Hill.
Aye. That concludes the open portion of our meeting, and I do believe that the board will need to go back into closed session. But I will gavel out of, I'll gavel out at 9:41.
All right.